What is up, entrepreneurs? It's been a minute. I know you all have been super worried. I'm well. I'm doing fantastic, actually. And today we're going to switch things up a little bit, go for a little stroll in the park, and answer some of your questions that you've been posting while I've been taking a little bit of a break. All right, so first question asks, I want to choose a 2-lens setup for the wide range of the 11mm by Sony f1.8, the Sony 15mm f1.4, Sigma 16 f1.4, and the Sigma 10 to 18 f2.8. And I believe that you are the right person to help me. Which do you choose? Well, that's an interesting question because it depends on what you're trying to do specifically. For this wide setup, is this for podcasting? Is this for sports? Or is this just for your home office setup and you're trying to do coverage? Because that's the only reason I would see wanting to go so wide. And honestly, these share so many of the same focal lengths and they're honestly too close. And I would actually push you towards a different lens. So you're looking at the Sony 11mm, Sony 15, Sigma 16, 10 to 18 by Sigma. Again, all of these are the same. We could even go ahead and throw in there the Sony 10 to 18 or the Sony 10 to 20 f4s. Those are okay even, but I would not stick with those simply because, again, the ranges are too close. I would instead go with something that has more of a zoom. So the Sigma 10 to 18 f2.8 lens actually is really dope. It's an APS-C. I'm not sure what cameras you're putting this on, but whether it's on full frame APS-C honestly doesn't matter because it is that good. So I would go with something like that, or even like the Tamron 11 to 20mm f2.8 because those are small. But I would do you one better. Instead, I would push you towards something like the Tamron 17 to 28 f2.8 or the 17 to 70. Both of those are still f2.8. The reason why is because at some point you're going to want to zoom. That zoom to go in from super wide to still super wide, but maybe an 8 or 9 millimeters difference, it's not that big of a deal. It's a small zoom amount, and you would see this equivalent on the new Sony 16 to 25 f2.8 lens that just came out for the Sony full frame cameras. You can use it on APS-C, but it's just a matter of understanding that you're not getting much range either way. You want something that gives you flexibility to change your mind and be able to work within a different region. So if you do go with the wide, I really enjoyed the Sigma 10 to 18 f2.8. It looks dope. It looks really, really good. I would go there, and then I would go with the Tamron 17 to 70 f2.8 or get me a good stellar prime. 35mm tends to work great whether it's on full frame or APS-C, and so that's more of the route that I would choose, honestly, in your predicament. Hope that helps. So the next question isn't quite a question, it's more of a comment, and they're saying like they do motorcycle videos, not really into using Product Showcase. And I wanted to bring that up simply because Product Showcase is way more amazing than just the name or the title of the actual product showcase. Like it's more than just the title, you know what I mean? All right, so this is using Product Showcase. So I just saw that little angel statue, and case in point, it's not about me trying to necessarily advertise anything. It's really just a new type of focusing mode that even if there is a face in the shot, you don't have to prioritize that face. You can focus on whatever the closest object is. So whether I want that to be the hand or I want that to be the rose or something like that. Either way, I'm good to go. And that way, I just have a new dynamite autofocus mode that works really well. And at any time, I can also tap to focus if I want to start tracking out of nowhere, even though I'm in Product Showcase mode. So just want to throw that little tidbit out there. So the next question comes, someone's asking, what's the ideal ISO depending on what you're doing with the A6700? And I think they're kind of referring to the dual base ISO and whether or not you should use a dedicated number in order to not get noise in the shot. So you see I'm kind of walking around, the exposure keeps changing because the lighting is changing. If you're in a scenario like this, it's going to always vary based on the light, but let's go someplace a little bit more controlled slightly. So let's take this kind of a scenario, which depending on what you're filming, you can be in all kind of scenarios. Maybe you're mostly indoors, mostly outdoors, or it could be 60-40, 50-50 split. It just depends on the kind of work that you're doing or kind of content that you're making. But let's say you're someplace like this where you pretty much have the kind of lighting pretty much locked off, but otherwise it's not. It can change. So your ISO is always going to be based on, number one, the environment, and then number two, like looking at the A6700, I'm assuming you're talking about S-Log3. That base ISO is going to be set similar to what we have, or almost exact to what we have in the Sony ZV-E1. So let's consider the two base ISOs. You have the lower base ISO, which is 800, and then you have the higher base ISO, which is 2500. It really depends on the situation, again, based on the lighting, your exposure triangle, and the other settings that you're going to be using, that you kind of want to go based off of not just exposing everything properly, but your subject or whatever it is that you're creatively trying to style. For me, I pretty much want everything just about evenly exposed in a shot like this, but I mostly want to make sure my face isn't too dark. And I think that's pretty indicative of anybody that's creating content at this point. So think about that. Now, in this scenario, I would go with the lower 800 ISO because that is what's closest. If I'm indoors and maybe I'm fighting lights or I'm using dedicated lighting, then maybe I go to that second base ISO, but I would want to swap between the two. Now, the big difference between the A6700 and the Sony ZV-E1, which I've covered in a different video, is the fact that the ZV-E1 has dual base ISO in all of the picture profiles, from Cinetone to any of the other ones. It has those two dual base ISOs. Unfortunately, when I did test the A6700, it did not have those. And I went through just trying different ones. And the way that you know that you'll see it, even if it's not officially in the settings, unless you turn it off in the sensor tech is there. So it's just maybe would be extra work to turn it off. So the fact that this one is coming from the FX3 for the ZV-E1, the A6700, I believe is similar to the FX30, if not identical. But unfortunately, we just don't have those dual base ISOs, so maybe it is turned off. The easiest way to test what is available in your camera, or just what some of the cleanest ones are, is to put the lens cap on, turn off any auto adjusting settings in your camera, and then start to record. I usually like to use my live streaming setup so I can see it on a larger monitor. Go ahead and start slightly going and just have some audio, even if it's scratch audio from your computer, to say now it's at 200 or whatever. But usually what I'll do is show all the settings on the screen so I can see that, and I'm audibly talking through this process. But there's no dual base ISO on all of these settings, unfortunately, in the A6700. So stick with the dual base ISO. Otherwise, use the exposure triangle and the lowest ISO possible, just depending on your environment for the most part. Gotta get my bag off the floor. I am not with the ant brigade. I've had that happen where ants start crawling all over your bag and stuff. I'm not with it. Me and the outdoors have a fine line. You know what I'm saying? It'd be different. We were camping, but we're not out here in these real and digital streets. So next question. So this one's asking the difference between the Sony ZV-E1 and A7C Mark II if you want to just capture day in the life content stuff, as well as family videos. Which one would be better, especially if the A7C II can do the APS-C crop officially in the camera? That setting is turned on. And what's the difference essentially with that 1.5 times crop for the APS-C mode, and on and on. But ultimately, what is the big deal with this, and which one would be better? In this case, this is one of the scenarios where, surprisingly, I would probably usher you more towards the Sony A7C Mark II, because even though you can use APS-C lenses like I'm doing right now in these videos, like I do for my live streams, like I've done for a ton of B-roll, like I've done for a lot of things that I get a lot of compliments on, and people are none the wiser. It's quick note here. Some stuff that you see online, rants, concerns, complaints, are literally stuff that only exists online. It doesn't really become an issue to the everyday creator, to someone that's actually making money with their content, or they're producing videos on YouTube, but their full-time work for the most part is off YouTube, and they're doing filmmaking, photography, videography work, events, you name it. But the main reason would not be because of the APS-C crop. It's just because that mode is enabled, because you're looking at a 33 megapixel sensor. And so when you crop in, you still have more than 12 millimeters on the ZV-E1. I don't have to zoom in to a 1.5 times crop in order for me to use an APS-C lens. Right now, I'm using the Samyang 12 millimeter f2 lens, and this is only at about a 1.3 times crop. I even have a little bit more wiggle room. I could go out to a 1.2 somewhere, yeah, usually like right at 1.2, and all of that black is gone, in addition to using active stabilization. Is the quality terrible? I could put on a 20 millimeter f2.8 lens. That's a full frame lens. The quality isn't so much so about the crop. It's more about the camera. It's about the settings. It's about the creator that are adjusting the camera and the settings. And it's about whether or not the footage actually looks good, because it was shot to actually look good. Yes, the lens can make a difference. Yes, the crop, you're continuing to lose resolution. But honestly, in this day and age, it's honestly, again, it's just one of those issues that's brought up online, but it does not matter. Not in real life. Nobody would care. But the real benefit to you getting the A7C II is the fact you still have a lot of the pros of the ZV-E1. You do have higher resolution with that sensor. It is a downside with that sensor just a little bit from the rolling shutter, meaning if you whipped or pan, or like your kids going from here to there, maybe you're filming their T-ball and you're really close, and so you're whipping it kind of fast, you'll notice that the vertical lines, when you turn, they are very, very skewed. And with the ZV-E1, you don't have that issue. So those minor differences, but again, most of the time, the average everyday person that's watching that content does not care, because we watch way terrible footage on our phones and from more expensive cameras, and we literally don't care. Some big blockbusters, cult following videos and movies were shot with ton of noise, rolling shutter, shaky footage, whatever. Nobody cares, because it was about the story, it was about the content. So just don't major too much in the minor, because you can get lost in the sauce, and it just becomes less about what you're trying to create and capture and more about things that really don't matter, again, in real life. So that would be my advice. Go with the A7C II. But one last but, and I want to share this with you specifically for your question. As soon as this plane is done, because gosh darn it, I've had to deal with this in a while. Was it American Airlines? Of course it'd be you. Southwest would never. So here's the thing. When we think about another plane, you're lucky I can't see you. Haters gonna hate, man. All right, where was I? So here's the other important thing that we think about when we are thinking about shooting our kids. Maybe you're thinking about where they're at right now. Maybe they're little. But what makes me really push you towards the A7C is the fact that my nephew graduated. I took the A7 IV, which this is basically... Who? American. I know it's you. It's gotta be. When that procession is moving and you see them coming or you see them coming out and you want to capture all of it, whether that's switching between photos and videos, there are some physical dials that the A7C II has that the ZV-E1 does not have. And in this type of environment, even if it's only a once in a lifetime situation, or if you have a lot of kids in your family, or you want to do this just for practice, and maybe niece and nephews or your friends' kids are graduating, it's really good practice to be in that environment and actually test it. Or a sports game, because when they're going from one side of the court to the other side of the court, and you're trying to get away from this person here to your person that's just slightly ahead of them, how fast can you switch to the settings? Can you switch quickly between a photo and video mode? Yes, being able to jump from full frame to APS-C crop mode versus just punching in like we can do on the ZV-E1, it makes a whole hell of a lot of difference. And I also experienced this with the original A7C when I was speaking at Social Media Marketing World 1 year. And I was using a different 70-200 lens. Again, you're punching in, you're quickly getting that shot, but these are not shots that are going to happen again. Once in a lifetime moments. And so it's making sure you get the right thing for those moments versus the everyday thing. We could use our phone, and a lot of stuff you probably will use your phone, but those are some things to think about. But the A7C II would be a stellar choice simply when you think about those moments that you really want to capture, do a great job, and that footage looks amazing no matter what year it is. A7C II is going to be the way to go. So hopefully you got some value out of today's Q&A. And if you enjoyed this kind of on-the-go content creation. We definitely are going to be doing some more of these because finally it's not a bitter cold winter or a hell hot heat, and I'd rather enjoyed this setup myself. So hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure you leave your questions down below and you might get featured in the next video. With that, guys, with passion, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.